This is Manchester city centre, and behind all these posh shops lies a story that changed Britain and the world. And it's all down to this stuff, cotton. It's only just over 200 years ago that cotton cloth started to be manufactured in this country, and Manchester soon became the powerhouse and driving force behind the new cotton industry. The building at the heart of this story lies here in the city centre, and it revolutionised British society. Built in 1780, on this spot was the first cotton mill in Manchester. Today, it's buried under this car park, and we've got just 3 days to locate and retrieve one of the most important historic sites in Britain. The late 1700s saw massive change in Britain. The development of steam engines meant the first use of huge machines. These were particularly important to the rise of the cotton mills. Manchester was at the forefront of this change. Its very first cotton mill was built on this site in 1780 by entrepreneur Richard Arkwright. His mill housed steam technology way ahead of its time. Not that you'd know it today. Francis, if there was a mill here, they've managed to wipe out every single piece of evidence of it.
Well, not actually, Tony. Behind you there, you can see you've got cobbles. Now, I think that was the surface of the yard that went outside the mill. That's certainly early 19th century cobbles. So presumably then, Mike, the front of the mill was run along those cobbles.
Yes, Francis, we've actually got a number of maps. This is one from 1831, and it shows the mill as a rectangular building with a reservoir below it, and then the cobbles running in between.
If we know that, then why are we bothering to dig the site?
Because although this is a factory that's been used for 150 years, Tony, we don't know how the mill was laid out, we don't know how it developed.
But digging one rectangular building isn't going to take 3 days, is it?
Not one building, it's been rebuilt a number of times. It burnt down in the 1850s, for instance.
So how are we going to locate it?
Well, you see, we've had a bit of a deliberation about this. The obvious one would be to whack a trench right through the middle of it, but we really want to find out a bit more about how well preserved it is, where the width of it is. So what we're going to do is just pop one in through there. That will give us the precise width of the walls, it will give us the location of the walls, and it will give us some idea of the depth of deposits as well.
You seem quite excited about this. But your passion is prehistory.
Yeah, but this is the prehistory of the Industrial Revolution.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Arkwright created 2 cutting-edge systems for the mill. The first was a steam engine to power the mill directly, something no one else had yet achieved. The second was an innovative water system that used a steam engine together with a water wheel. We hope to find evidence of both systems near the centre of the mill. But to find this, we need to find the mill's walls. Even though we've got various plans, they aren't reliable. So the diggers will place Trench 1 here, which they hope will stretch across one side of the original mill. The site hasn't been developed since the Blitz of 1940, when a mill rebuilt in the Victorian era was destroyed by the Luftwaffe. Because of the hard modern tarmac, the geophys team can't stick their normal sensors in the ground. Instead, they're using radar to cover the whole mill area, which will take them all day. Within an hour of stripping the surface, Phil thinks he's hit the jackpot.
Kerry, this is it. This is the wall of the mill house. We've got the yard out there, and here's the wall, and then inside the mill. Let's see a bit more of this wall here.
If Phil has hit the wall of Arkwright's 1780s mill, he's uncovered a building at the root of massive change in Manchester. A building that helped transform a village into a metropolis. We've got this plan of Manchester from the 1740s, and it's beautiful. You've got a hunting scene, pretty little sailing boats, hardly built up at all.
Quite rural, isn't it?
Yeah, but then 50 years later, it's really built up. So what has happened?
Manchester's boomed as a textile town, in part because of Arkwright's mill coming in the early 1780s. That's led to a huge number of additional houses, huge number of additional factories.
I wonder what the local people must have thought when Arkwright's mill went up.
I think they must have been astonished. This is Manchester's first mill, it's its first chimney, 40-foot high, belching smoke, and we got people coming to look at it as a tourist attraction. They were amazed.
So you're quite optimistic about what will come out of the archaeology?
I am. This is, not only is this Manchester's first textile mill, it starts the modern world, it starts the whole industrialisation process. It's not just a building that is important regionally, it's also important nationally.
Such a bold undertaking was typical of Arkwright, an astute businessman. What sort of man was he?
Well, he was described by a contemporary as a gross, bag-cheeked, pot-bellied Lancashire man with a copious free digestion. He had warts on his face. I don't think he felt very easy in social situations.
He must have been pretty well off.
I think he had a huge wealth. He had wealth accrued from his own spinning ventures, but of course without the risk, by selling licences and ensuring that those licences were only available for factory-based cotton spinning.
So you could say that he was the father of the whole factory system in Britain?
You could do, yes.
Oh, Phil, what we got here?
Back at the car park, Phil's convinced he's slap bang on Arkwright's wall, but Francis isn't so sure.
We've got the edge of the mill. There's the cobbles, there's the wall, here's the edge of the wall, and I think this is an internal floor.
Are you sure that's a wall, Phil? That seems very flat and even, that surface.
What do you mean, if that is not the wall, where the hell's the wall then?
Well, yeah, that is the question, but you got to convince me.
All right,
Phil.
well, you go away and give me some time and I'll try and prove it.
While we don't know exactly where the walls are, we've got a good idea of the dimensions of the mill. Arkwright built his mills to a standard size. This was determined by the huge machines inside the mills, like these ones at Quarrybank Mill Museum just outside Manchester. The dimensions of the Manchester mill are also in archival records, about 30 feet wide by 170 feet long. As well as trying to find more walls, we're putting Trench 2 over what we think is the middle of the mill, to find any evidence of the original power system. But as we strip off more and more of the tarmac, there's another complication in finding the original walls. Francis, these bricks are in a right old state, aren't they? Do you reckon that blackness has got anything to do with the Blitz?
I think that could be, yes, but there's a lot of charcoal around the place from an earlier fire in the middle of the 19th century. I mean, these places really were fire traps.
So what kind of problems did they have, Mike?
Cotton itself, it's a very flammable material. So when you're manufacturing it, if you're adding in all the oils and grease for the manufacturing process, it's very easy to set it on fire. And there were dozens of fires in mills in Manchester alone.
Ruth, you found loads of clay pipes, haven't you? Did they actually smoke in the factory?
What the workers and lower classes are doing, they're actually breaking off the stems to make them into shorter versions, which they call stubbies, or more colloquially, nose warmers up here, and which meant that they were lighter to hold in the mouth, and therefore they could actually work the machines whilst they were smoking as well.
So let's get this clear. We're in a cotton mill where you've got loads of inflammable dust that can actually explode, and the guys are puffing pipes. Francis, has the fact that there have been fires here caused you problems in the archaeology?
Well, actually it has, Tony, because the place is burning down, then they knock it down completely and rebuild it, and it's given us all sorts of rebuilds and rephases, and it's actually causing a bit of a headache.
Despite the rebuilds, the team suspect that the best place to find an original wall is where the cobbled road leading up to the mill stops. So Trench 3 is put in at the edge of the car park. The rise of steam-driven machinery changed Britain forever. Huge numbers of people flooded into the cities where factories provided work. But such immigration brought about terrible living conditions. One observer of living and working conditions in industrial Manchester was Frederick Engels. Together with Karl Marx, he started a worldwide political movement, communism. Marx and Engels discussed their ideas just down the road from our mill at Chetham's Library.
This is a really eerie moment for me because we're sitting in exactly the same alcove that Karl Marx used to sit in when he came up to Manchester to visit his old mate Frederick Engels. What do you think they used to talk about in this alcove?
Well, I suppose they were setting the world to rights, but unlike anybody else who might sit here and say how things ought to be, their ideas actually had some practical effect in the world.
And Engels himself actually did a lot of research on the working class in Manchester.
Yes, he wrote this book here. This is a photocopy of a bit of it, The Condition of the Working Class in England. And what he says almost make you weep. Look here, it says, a whole family is often accommodated on a single bed, he says about the conditions they were living in, and sometimes a heap of filthy straw and covering of old sacking hide them in one undistinguished heap. It's just terrible. It goes on to say, often more than one family lived in a damp cellar, containing only one room, in whose pestilential atmosphere from 12 to 16 persons were crowded. It's just horrific, isn't it?
And even though it was written over 150 years ago, it's still quite touched you, isn't it?
It has. It's just so horrible that it makes you want to find out more, to find out how people could actually exist in a world like that.
Do you want to hold it on the fence for me, Helen? Just hold it on that fence.
At the top end of the car park, Helen starts her investigation into the living conditions described by Engels. As day one nears an end, we're still not sure if Phil's walls are arkwright, but Mike's confident of the date of the wall in Trench 3.
Well, we stopped digging and starting the recording. What happened here?
Well, what we've got here, Tony, is we've got the end of the mill. We've got the cobbles here,
Yeah.
and then we've got a line of bricks. They're a bit bashed about by a couple of holes which have been bashed through in the mid-20th century, but either side we have brick walling. You see there's got 2 rows of bricks here, and then a row of bricks and some stone sets over here, and we think that's the doorway into the mill.
You say it's the doorway into the mill, but earlier you said to me there were lots of mills at different times.
There are lots of mills. Now, we're pretty certain this is Arkwright's 1781 to 82 mill.
Why?
This is a brick from 1854. It's very sharp, it's wire cut, and it's quite chunky, very nicely made. However, that is a brick from this wall. Much, much more irregular. It's made in a wooden mould, it's a slightly smaller size, and it's far more irregular, and this was made in Manchester between 1780 and 1820. This is the brick from Arkwright's first mill.
I bet you're glad you found that.
Absolutely delighted.
So, Matt, what are we going to do with this trench now?
Well, that's it really, Tony. It's job done here, but we have got a bonus in that when we've got to the end of the trench, we've got this huge stone column base here, and if you look closely you can see the circle there where the cast iron flange would have been at the bottom of the column, and these would have run all the way down the centre of the mill there.
So presumably that's proof positive that we're right inside the factory.
Absolutely.
By the end of the day, we found at least one piece of original Arkwright wall, and we're uncovering possible sites for the engine. And there's a whole other side of the story yet to explore.
For you, this dig isn't just about some old bits of machinery, is it?
No, it's about the really terrible lives of the people that worked in the mill and lived right in its shadow. In fact, over there were some buildings that we think had cellar dwellings underneath them, where the people may have actually lived. We're going to look at those tomorrow.
Should be some good finds there, shouldn't there?
Hope so.
But in addition to that, we've started work on this trench here, which is going to be huge. And already we've come up with this really interesting arch here. So tomorrow, we're not only going to try and get into the hearts and minds of the people who lived here, but into the heart of the factory that dominated their lives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beginning of day 2, and the first thing you notice when you drive into this Manchester car park is that it's full of really nice cars. Manchester's certainly going through a boom time at the moment, as it was in 1780 when Richard Arkwright arrived here to build his mill. But within just a few years, the people who worked at it were living in the most appalling conditions. So today, we're not just going to look at the factory itself, but at the lives of the people who lived in its shadow.
At the top end of the site, Helen's investigating the homes on Angel Street next door to the mill.
So Helen, why are we over here?
Well, on the map, we've got the houses here of people who almost certainly worked in the mill just within spitting distance.
So where are we, Mike?
Can you see that expansive glass there, Francis?
Yeah.
That's where New Mount Street comes out. So we're almost opposite that, just on this side.
I mean, these look like sort of garden plots or something. What would they be in?
These are quite nice workers' housing,
Right.
built in the late 18th century.
And by the time we get to the 19th century, they're really the lowest buildings of the low. You've got a family living on every floor, including one in the cellar, and some of the cellars are only 8 feet square.
Yeah, but originally, these are actually quite nice artisan houses with only one family in each house.
Okay, now if we're going to make sense of these, let's have a look. I mean, we need to come all the way along here, a big trench like this, yeah?
Yeah.
And we should get several property boundaries if we do that.
Accounts from the 1830s tell us of some of the people who lived here on Angel Street. Margaret Sheen, aged 26, factory worker. Catherine Clark, aged 8. Patrick McBridge, aged 40, a drunkard. In an attempt to find the homes of those who lived here, Bridge tears up more tarmac. Yesterday, the car park seemed to be giving us a textbook time team. We appeared to be right on the original mill, with Arkwright's walls being revealed by Phil in just hours. We also found an arch which we hoped would help us to find the steam engines, but it's not obvious whether this arch is from the first mill or a Victorian rebuild.
Mike, am I right in thinking you think that this is the Phase 1 Arkwright wall?
I do. Looking at the bricks, I think this is our original Arkwright material.
Well, you see, I've just been looking at it, and this wall sits on top of this wall here. So I think this wall has got to be later.
Well, it does look like that, doesn't it? If you look at that break, it sits on it. But these bricks are early. These are the same type as this, which would make them Arkwright as well.
Well, in other words, the whole thing is Arkwright.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question. That wall there is later than that wall. It sits on the plinth there.
Confused? So are we. Suddenly, Mike and Phil realise that 1780 bricks may not mean a 1780 wall. So this arch may be nothing to do with Arkwright's engine. Worse, all the dating they've done on the walls of the mill so far is thrown into question. So Francis pins hopes on a different tactic to work out the mill's layout.
Francis, when I saw all the incredible stuff in this trench yesterday, I was really excited. I thought this is one of the only time teams I can remember where by the end of day one, bang, we'd gone right down on the money. We'd got Arkwright. But as day two has gone on, we haven't. We've lost him. Look, all this GIF is, all this wonderful area. How much is Arkwright? Virtually nothing at all.
Well, I think one of the problems was that the Arkwright bricks we were identifying yesterday were probably reused Arkwright bricks. So that threw us. Now, I think we do have a little bit of Arkwright here, and that's these column bases. You can see there's one there, another one there, and another one coming up there. Arkwright used to use column bases to run down the centre of his buildings. So that gives us the alignment, because we've also found one in that little trench over there.
This tiny little thing here, yeah.
That's right, and that also had the only bit of Arkwright wall that I'm prepared to swear by.
So 3 column bases and a tiny little bit of wall.
Yes, but look, they're going down the middle of the building. That gives us the spine of the building, okay?
Yeah.
So let's have a look at where they're going. Come on. Right. Now, you can see where those two ladies have obligingly stood.
Yeah. Hello.
They're down the centre of the building.
Yeah.
And then the other one is over there by the genuine Arkwright wall. Now, what we do know is that Arkwright's buildings were 30 feet wide. If the columns are going down the middle, if we measure out 15 feet on either side, we'll get where the walls ought to be.
So do we do that?
Yeah, you can come and help me. Come on. Grab the tape.
Yeah.
Hop in next door to that column.
Yeah. From the middle of the column?
The middle of the column.
Right. You all right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Here we go.
12. Here we go. 15 feet.
Right.
So the wall by rights ought to be here.
And there's solid brick all over it.
Yes, that's a slight problem, isn't it? What we'll do is look underneath them just to make sure that there is wall there.
And if we are on the money there?
It's Arkwright's mill.
So we go on it, we
Yes.
dig it.
Yes,
You sure?
certain.
Bridge has made great progress on her Angel Street house, revealing nearly a complete cellar dwelling in just a couple of hours. Victorian reports from Frederick Engels and others describe the hardships of living and working in the mills of the area. One of our team, Stuart, has got a personal insight into what mill life would have been like. His mother worked in a mill near Leeds.
I remember how little money we had in those early days, and I can remember hiding from the rent man because when we were a bit short on a Monday night, we used to have to keep quiet, and the lights were turned down because the rent man was expected and things like that.
It's weird because whenever we talk about mill life, it seems like it was another era. It's amazing to me that you, who are a relatively young bloke,
Thank you.
still remember it.
Well, I do. I grew up with it. My mother was a weaver, worked in the weaving sheds all her life. She was incredibly physically strong. She worked 8 looms at once, but had to keep them all going the whole time, so incredibly hard physical work.
You know, one of the historians told me, and I thought this was so extraordinary, that all those northern comedians who used to speak like that with all those gestures, they actually did it, not as an affectation, but because virtually all of them worked in the mills, and it was so noisy there that they continually had to do all that elaborate communication, otherwise no one would ever understand what they were saying.
Yeah, and I can actually remember the looms turning, the noise, the workforce, the people. And one thing I remember about the loss of my mum's friends, the weavers, is that they'd lost fingers. Because when the shuttle was going backwards and forwards, you had to catch it and turn it round. And if you didn't get it right, it took your finger off. And I remember a lot of my mum's friends all sort of missing the odd end of their finger or a finger missing and things like that. So injury and deafness and hard work were all part of a weaver's life.
In our mill's heyday, there were 400 workers, mostly women and children. They'd have worked day and night as part of a new factory system. Today, we're still having trouble finding the walls that define the mill.
That feels like clay underneath.
Just about an hour ago, Francis came up with a master plan. If we lift these bricks in the right place, we ought to be able to find the wall of the original Arkwright mill. So Matt has dug, and look. Francis, there is no wall. The wall is entirely absent.
It is. It's a wall-free zone. I have to concede, Tony. There's lots of clay, but no wall.
Where's the wall?
Well, it's not there.
We know, we can see that. Where is it?
Well, I'm not sure, Tony. It could be that the wall's further out than we thought. It could be as simple as that. Or maybe this floor has completely removed it. We're just not sure.
Basically, this is the problem.
While the team rethink how to find the mill walls, the search is still on for the engine and water wheel. Of course, the machinery won't be there any longer, but we hope to find a wheel pit and the brick base for the original engine.
What sort of engine are we looking for, Mike?
Well, one of the things we know Arkwright installed on this site was something called a rotative steam engine to power textile machinery, and that looks like this. Big beam here, with a cylinder at one end, a support in the middle, and the reason it's called rotative is it's got a great big flywheel at the other end. Now that is designed to transfer the up and down motion to a circular motion. Arkwright was the first one to attempt this, and as he was the first, it failed, unfortunately. So what he has to do is he has to go back to some older technology, which is called a Newcomen steam engine. And that's very similar. It's got a central stanchion, big beam up there, cylinder at one end, and then at this end, instead of the flywheel, we've got a great big bucket for pumping water. And that's moving water from a lower reservoir to an upper reservoir, and the reservoirs are to provide a head of water to run a water wheel. So he's going from steam power back to water wheel technology, but still using a steam engine to move the water around.
Because the mill was nowhere near a river, an artificial water system was built to power the water wheel. Stuart sets off to investigate how it worked. At the site, the radar results from yesterday are in, and while they don't help us sort out the original from the later walls, an anomaly has caught John's imagination.
Now, what we're looking at are the plans of the radar. So these are looking at the horizontal slices. Here we're at the top, and we go more deeply to the bottom here. Focus at the top here. That's the cobbled road at the front of the building. Now, these top layers are showing all the tarmac, the disturbance and so on. As we go deeper into the ground, those disappear. And look, if I draw your eye to this particular anomaly, and it actually continues down possibly to 2 meters. Now, if we look at the plan, this is taking one of these depths at about 1 metre or so.
Yeah.
There's the trench in blue with our wall lines, and there's that blob.
So that's the pit?
Well,
It could be, Francis.
Yeah.
Now, we know the diameter of the wheel. It's 30 feet across, which means the pit's going to be 15 feet deep, which is, what, 3.5 metres?
so the fact we've got it going down 2 meters,
That's pretty
at
good.
least.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
The position of John's blob could give us the actual location of the water wheel pit. John's not the only one who wants to find out where the water wheel is. Stuart's been working on the water system, and he's giving me a bird's eye view.
Stuart, we're involved in this desperate hunt for a water wheel, but where did the water actually come from?
Well, the assumption has always been it came from a series of pits up that road up there. See where the yellow sign is?
Yeah.
And it came from a series of ponds and came down this slope. But we've actually made a major discovery while we've been here. You see this lovely plan of about 1760. It's beautifully drawn, isn't it? Which shows a plot of land here. And importantly, it shows water course. There's a little stream flowing down here. Well, you can identify that plot of land, and it's actually that little plot of land there. So there was a water course that came down here and fed a pond up here. There's the mill. That pond there was actually just in this area down here below us. And then there's an overflow which went into a very large pond which was down the slope where all those cars are there. Now what that actually shows is a very complex water management system around the mill.
So the water system seems to work like this. Water runs from an upper pond along a culvert at the side of the mill to a water wheel somewhere in the middle of the building. Having turned the wheel, the water then runs out into a lower pond. The water's pumped back up to the upper pond, and so it's gone full circle. And this early map gives us another critical clue.
Importantly, I think it shows us where the water wheel might be. See on this plan, this is Arkwright's time, 1793, a water wheel shown there.
Now that looks to me pretty near where John's big blob is on his geophysics.
It's almost exactly where John's blob is. I mean, we don't often agree, but we agree about that water wheel and his anomaly. They're in exactly the same position.
The wheel pit should be obvious, as it would be brick-lined, 8 feet wide and 15 feet deep. If they can find it, they would have located the centre of the mill, and so they could project the outline of the original building. The team badly need this layout. So far, we've been finding lots of walls, but we can't be sure which ones are the original Arkwright ones, and which are from a later Victorian rebuild.
You know those bricks?
But then Phil has a brainwave.
Look at this. That is the mortar from the 1850. Look at it. It's really hard. Have a look at one of those bricks from Arkwright's wall and have a look at the mortar there.
Ah, now look at that. That's as hard as concrete. This is soft, brown, limey stuff. That's brilliant then, because if that's Arkwright and that's 1854...
Exactly.
So we couldn't rely on bricks. But we can, it appears, rely on mortar. We've just invented a new dating technique. Absolutely. Mortar dating. Well, actually, I mean, it's going to be a godsend, but it's going to allow us to sort out all those tricky problems right over there in the centre of the site.
Absolutely.
Using this new mortar dating method, the team discover the walls of Arkwright's mill are right where Phil thought they were on the morning of day one. The mill was in fact a whopping 40 feet wide, instead of the 30 feet reported at the time of its building. This means the records from the time were wrong. Well, that's one mystery solved. After 2 days of arguing and geophysics and excavating, at last we think we may have the walls of Arkwright's mill. In addition to that, in order to try and find out how it actually worked, here we think we've got the water wheel. It's not those flagstones, they're part of some later 19th century pathway, but if we whip up those flags tomorrow, underneath it, hopefully we'll get the mill. In addition to that, on this far side of the site, we've been trying to see if we can find out how the people who actually did the work around here actually lived. Got a huge trench, incredibly deep. Bridge has been working on it for about a day and a half now. How's it gone, Helen?
Well, it's just amazing. It really brings you up short to see the actual place that people were living in, these incredibly squalid conditions that we read the descriptions of, and it's such a contrast with the mill. It really makes you stop and think. Can you give us a walkthrough, Bridge?
Sure. I mean, it's really interesting because once you're down here, there's a very well-appointed and well-built cellar. You've got the entrance that would come down off the street through here and come straight into this room here. I like to think it is the best room in the house. It's got this lovely stone floor flag, and then it's got this hearth over here. Then we've got a doorway that you'd come through to enter into this room with a very decorative brickwork floor. And again, we've got another hearth over here. And this would be like your kitchen room. This is where you've done all your cooking over here. There would have been a small window just here. That would have been your only form of light into the back room. But you've got to remember that all around me here, there was plaster and it was painted a vivid cornflower blue.
This isn't a hellhole, it's actually rather nice.
Well, Bridge is talking about when it was first built. 50 years later, you've got a family in each room and a cholera epidemic raging. It would have been just horrendous.
Do we have a secure date for this place?
Well, we do, actually. Embedded in this piece of plaster is what looks like a coin. And if we can get the plaster off, if we can clean the coin up, we might get an exact date.
So, a date for the plaster, Arkwright's original mill, and the water wheel. All tomorrow. Beginning of day 3, and guess what? It's raining in Manchester. Mind you, it would have been pretty wet here 220 odd years ago when Richard Arkwright built his mill, because we're pretty sure the whole thing was powered by water and steam. Not that we've found that much of the factory, because every time we've got anywhere near it, it's miraculously seemed to disappear through our fingers, isn't it? So are you really confident that we actually do have the water wheel here?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, hooray, hooray, hooray. And yet you've been found wanting so many times over the last 48 hours. Why are you so sure?
Well, all the maps tell us the water wheel was in this position here where we stood.
We've seen it on the radar plan, but if you're not convinced, look at this vertical section. There's the top of the ground. That red line marks that road surface. Below that road surface is this clear response. That has to be the wheel pit.
And does it work for you in terms of the logic of the architecture?
It does, Tony, because we're in the middle of the mill, and that, in an Arkwright mill, is where the water wheel will be.
So why is it so significant that we find this wheel?
Well, it will tie everything down.
I mean, if you know the position of the water wheel, it transfers the energy via a shaft into the mill, and once you know the position of that, you can work out where all the looms are, how many there would be. The whole layout is dependent on finding that.
So how do we dig it?
Well, I think it's going to have to be big. We're going to have to get in heavy equipment. Personally, I think it's going to be quite a challenge.
Do you notice he used the word challenge? It's a modern word for we're really a creek. The diggers get down and dirty on the area where the team are convinced the brick-lined water wheel pit is. In the incident room, Bridge and historian Guy de la Bedouillère are investigating a key find. Yesterday, we discovered a coin buried in the plaster of our cellar. If Bridge can clean the encrusted coin up, it might give us the date of the construction of the cellar.
Look, from the size, that's an English halfpenny. And that could be 18th century or 19th century.
At the moment, I'm really having difficulty even finding evidence of relief or...
No, I can see it straight away. Look, do you see that mark there? That's the foot of Britannia, which of course we've still got on the 50p coin today, but in those days was on the halfpenny and the penny. And her figure goes up like that there.
Okay.
And that line there, running up to just where you've got with cleaning, that's called the exergue mark, and under here is the date.
Oh, great.
So if you can take off the plaster here, that small area, we'll get the date, hopefully, if it's preserved.
Great, so it's not far to go
No,
then.
that's right.
Perfectly.
Back on site, the hunt for the wheel pit isn't going quite as planned.
Francis, can I remind you of an exchange earlier on today? Tony, are you confident that there is a water wheel in this trench? You four, yes, 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 yes. Hello, water wheel, where are you? It's not there.
It's turned out to be a little bit more complicated than that, Tony.
Is it?
Yeah. In fact, it's all happening as we speak. Phil down there has got something, and I don't know what it is. And he won't tell us.
Phil!
What?
What?
Well, if you give me some time to work it out, I might be able to tell you what. All I know is that there's something coming along here, which this wall is sitting on the top of. I don't know what that something coming along here is, but all I know is that the wall is on top of it. And I'm going to dig down there and try and find out what that thing that goes underneath is.
Could that thing, Mike, that goes underneath that wall be anything to do with our water wheel?
Well, conceivably it could be, Tony. I think the issue here is the wheel pits, if that's what it is, ought to be 15 feet deep, really from where we're standing here. And Phil's got a bit of way to go yet before he's got to 15 feet.
Look at those faces. Just look at those faces. You look like 4 boys who failed to do your homework. Wow.
At least there's good news from Bridge, who's managed to clean up her coin.
I can see the date, Guy.
Put it up on the screen.
Here we go, look. 1775.
You're right. There's the 1, 7, 7, 5, which takes us right into the reign of George III. Look, the truth is that the Royal Mint produced very few coins in that period, so there was a terrible shortage of coinage. 1775 was forged and copied over and over again. So this could very well be a forged halfpenny of George III, paid by an exploitative mill owner who would only have paid a little bit more than a farthing for each one of these coins.
How long were these in circulation for, these 1775 coins?
Well, as you get into the beginning of the 19th century, the Royal Mint is starting to produce far more coins and better quality coins. This probably didn't circulate for more than 15 to 20 years. That coin was almost certainly put into the wall of the house when it was built, around the time our factory was being built.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's brilliant,
I'm just
isn't it?
so pleased about that.
So the coin confirms that the houses on Angel Street were built sometime in the late 18th century. Back at the mill trench, Phil's still investigating his thing. But next door to it, the team think they've found a boiler house. This could give us a clue as to how the power system behind the mill worked. A great discovery, but it hasn't located the site of a steam engine, nor does it help us find the wheel pit. At the top end of the site, Bridges Trench has given us more than we ever expected.
Anything new in your trench, Bridge?
Well, yes, Tony, there has been. Can you see these bricks here?
Yeah.
These are of a later date than the other cellar wall bricks. And it seems that when the mill burnt down in 1850, these cellar houses also went through renovation. And what they did was they actually bricked up this doorway here between the 2 rooms. And instead of having just potentially one family living here in 2 rooms, the mill was able to hire out 2 separate rooms to 2 separate families who would have lived in really quite cramped conditions from then on.
What about finds, Ruth?
We've got a fairly standard set of Victorian debris that you'd expect in the backfill, but we've got a rare survival of a lady's clog from the Victorian period. It's possibly from a worker's clog around this area. However, we know that they weren't wearing clogs in the mills at that time. They actually used their bare feet to pick up stray lumps of cotton on the mill floor. So quite a nice little touch there.
But not our date.
No, unfortunately.
But we have got something that is our date. I've been looking through the poor rate books. See, it says Angel Street here. Number 35, which I think is this very house here, we can see that it's divided into house, cellar and shop, and we've got the actual name of the person who was renting this out. We know it's William Metcalfe. So we've got a name of a person who was here in 1841 in exactly our cellar.
Francis!
Yeah?
Got it!
Really?
Yes!
Yards away, Phil's now uncovered the thing that ran under the wall.
Come and have a look.
Oh, heck.
What do you think of that then?
I wasn't expecting that, Phil.
It's a 20th century drain.
Well, I'm completely gobsmacked. Right, we still got to find the mill wheel, haven't we? Otherwise, Tony's going to make my life hell.
Oh, well, that's all right then,
Not only will they be given hell over a modern drain, but the boiler house they excavated earlier turns out to be from a later period. In a last-ditch attempt, the team excavate the brick-lined pit underneath it. But at least our researchers have come up trumps. In the early 19th century, Manchester boomed as a cotton town and the population exploded. Today, with so much recent development in Manchester, there's little left of the places once home to workers who crowded the city.
Hello, Tony. Is the cellar through there?
Yeah, straight through there. Thanks a lot.
But minutes from the site is an untouched testament to our story.
Cool, look at that.
Oh, are we going to fit through that?
No idea.
Hidden underneath a modern shop is a rare gem, a cellar dwelling.
Wow, come and have a look. Oh, it stinks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really damp and really close.
Slightly disorientated.
Well, that's the front, that's the road.
Right.
And it's actually about the same size as our Angel Street one.
Oh, look at this manky old floor.
It is revolting, isn't it? Looks like it's actually made of ashes from the fire. And look at that, there's a huge great fireplace that's been put in later. It's really badly built.
A right old state, isn't it?
Yeah, presumably fire underneath, off and above.
Presumably there would have been some light here.
There would have been a window there, you can see where it's been bricked up.
Oh, yeah.
But there would never have been much light because when the panes of glass broke, they generally couldn't afford to replace them, so just shoved rags in the holes.
Do we know what date this cellar was built?
It's about the same date as the Angel Street house, it's about 1790 odd.
Can you imagine what it would have been like living in here? How many people do you reckon?
Well, 1, 2, 3 families.
3 families in this room.
Could have been, yeah, 12 or 16 people, they say, living in one room.
And you reckon there would have been this kind of damp?
I don't see how they could have not had it. Cooking in here,
Yeah.
all breathing.
Going to the loo?
Yeah, no sanitation, no running water. Horrible.
Do you reckon it would have stunk like it does now?
Oh, more so. Oh, keep a pig down here. It just gets worse and worse.
Disgusting.
Back at the site, with time running out, the pit they're investigating has just got deeper and deeper.
I reckon we might actually finally have this well pit, you know.
That is deep.
That is deep.
How deep are you now?
Well, I did dangle a tape over there and it was 12 foot, so it's supposed to be 15 foot, so my money's on 3 more foot.
And that's 8 feet wide?
That's 8 foot wide, just bang on the money for that one.
And we didn't see it.
Mike,
Francis.
come over here, got something I want you to see.
On the other side of the mill, Francis may have found something even more exciting under the arch found on day 1.
All the walls down there, all 4 of them, appear to be lined in this stuff, and it's all the way round.
Well, that looks like that pitch or bitumen. But that's the sealant.
That's right, then presumably that hole was designed to take water. That's going to protect the brickwork.
Yeah, it would have to be watertight, so to protect the brickwork. So
what's going on?
That could mean that's a well. They could be pumping water. Aha, they're pumping water. Well, no, this wall behind me is very thick. It's just possible, Francis, that we've got one end of our Newcomen pumping engine.
Right.
That would be incredible, because that would mean this is the engine Arkwright installed in the 1780s after the attempt at steam power failed. But we're in the middle of the mill.
Well, exactly. I mean, you don't normally put them there, do you?
No, but what if this is the very first steam engine he installed, the 1781 one, which was meant to be running the machinery? That would have to be in the middle of the mill, like a water wheel, to run the machinery. It failed, but instead of building a new engine, they adapted it as a pumping engine. That would mean that we've found our 1781 engine and it under our very noses. It was here all the time. Okay,
thanks, Mike.
Amazingly, in the last hours of day 3, we seem to have found the most important parts of Arkwright's mill.
Mike, you lot have been making me promise after promise for the past 3 days. Have you delivered?
We have, Tony. Just look at this.
It's deep.
It's massive, isn't it? I said to you that if we had the wheel pit, we needed a hole 8 foot wide and 15 foot deep, and preferably 30 foot long. I can't do the 30 foot long because that goes over there, but that's 8 foot wide and it's 15 foot deep. In fact, we haven't got to the bottom, so we're missing the arch out of which the water would have flown. But we've got other material in there for a sluice gate, we think. That is the 1781 wheel pit.
All right, so if the wheel was in there, what about the steam?
Come over here.
Where are we going?
Just to here.
Yeah.
Do you remember these?
I do. I remember them on the first day, that lovely arch. The first exciting thing we found.
We now think this is the site of Arkwright's 1781 steam engine he tried to use to power textile machinery.
But if that was his very first engine, that was the one that didn't work properly.
It was.
So why is it still here?
Well, it was positioned in the middle of the mill so it could run the line shafting to power the textile machinery that way.
Yeah.
It didn't work, so what it looks like they've done is they've reused it for pumping water from the lower reservoir through the well there and out onto a spillway into channels running that way.
Arkwright's mill led the rise of the cotton mills in Manchester, making the city the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. The factory thickened the air with smoke and noise, dominating the lives of the poor. Arkwright's mill was also the site of innovative technology that we've managed to reveal in our 3 days. This is how we think our mill worked. An artificial water system drove the machinery. An engine pumped water between the lower and upper ponds, pushing water over a water wheel. It was a radical system for its time, but not as radical as the failed system it replaced. In 1781, Arkwright first installed a steam engine to drive the machinery directly. It didn't work. But this technology did inspire others who eventually succeeded, and within decades had taken over and mechanised British industry.
How significant a find is this?
This is monumental. This is what we've been looking for. This is the first time somebody has tried to apply steam to textile machinery.
So this isn't just archaeology, this is history.
This is where the modern world begins.
To ensure you catch all the latest updates, please do subscribe to this channel, follow us on social media, and sign up to our newsletter and join us on Patreon.